What's up, fourth period? Whoop. Who was in here third? Third was fun. Hey, did you guys get to see Matt Muse yesterday? He was so good, so good. Hopefully he'll be back. So welcome to Writers Week 28. Amazing. Those of you that remember Writers Week last year, what a difference from last year. And those of you that remember what Writers Week was 2 years ago, hopefully we'll be back there again next year, okay? If you have a chance, I want you guys to give a big round of applause to Tech and Mr. Crash, hardest working man at Fremd. They do so much to make this week happen, guys. Mrs. Inc. and Mr. Anderson, all the work they do all year long. Even if you don't know them, just go up to them and say thanks. Your booster parents and your English teachers, you need to thank them too, okay? Just give your parents a hug. We love hugs, okay? These are my favorite periods, are the student periods. Last period was courage and strength was the way we could sum that period up. So let's introduce, I think we've got Lilia, did I say that right? Williams, correct? Give her a round of applause. She's starting us off.
I'm Lilia. Shout out to Miss Marsh. Today I have a memoir to share. It was a beautiful spring day, the kind when the leaves would glow and my neighbor's wind chime would ring musically. One day, the gentle sunlight shone through the windows onto a game of psychological warfare. The participants, me, a 5'1" and a half tall human, an apex predator, versus Paprika, a cockatiel, part of the parrot family, about the height of an apple, descendant of the dinosaurs. We are more evenly matched than either of us would like to admit. Paprika likes to be outside of her cage and hang out with me, which is great. The issue is that she is a force of nature, and when left unattended, will cause property damage without hesitation. When she doesn't want to go back into her cage, she puts up a fight, especially when I'm in a hurry and really need to go somewhere. Wrangling Paprika back into her cage is like trying to grab a tiny, aggressive toddler who can fly. With my sister off at college, I am the resident bird catcher, and I take my job very seriously. On this day, Paprika sat on top of the sliding door, staring at me. Her proximity to a path that reaches the outdoors sets off alarm bells in my head, but it's time to focus. I was standing on a chair just tall enough to reach her, armed with merely a biscuit. I offered it to her. It's for you, you can have it. She stared at it judgmentally, then stared at me judgmentally. I moved it closer to her. Come on, it's fine, I'm not trying to catch you, I said, obviously trying to catch her. I could almost see the tiny gears in Paprika's head turning. She knew I only approached her on top of the chair with food when I was trying to put her back in her cage. We stood off in a face-off for a moment, the wind outside, a dramatic tune in the background. I held my breath, watching, waiting, and Paprika flew off the door onto the nearby kitchen table. I huffed, climbing off the chair, making a mental note to move it back later. The current conflict was of too much importance. I headed into the kitchen a few feet away, on a mission. The kitchen's oak cabinets and wood floor always instilled a soft feeling of warmth in the area. Today, however, there was only a stone-cold resolve as I headed to a second battle against my feathered foe. In the kitchen, my grandparents watched Paprika try to eat some flowers my mother had arranged in a vase a few days ago. My grandmother turned to me, annoyed. The bird has been out for ages. Please put her back. I'm trying. A doubtful look was shot my way, which I ignored. It's harder than it looks. The aforementioned avian noticed me approaching and froze. Now we were in a facing off against the table and both waiting to see what the other would do. It's like an old Western movie. Imagine a deserted town in the middle of nowhere. There's cacti dotting the land, dust and tension in the air. Somewhere in this town, imagine two cowboys circling each other, sneers on their faces, each watching and waiting for the first strike. Now replace one of the cowboys with a 2-ounce parrot and the other with a teenage girl, and that's the scene on my kitchen on that afternoon. This town ain't big enough for the two of us. Just need to wait for the right moment, and the tension was shattered when I finally reached across the table and Paprika skittered away, just barely avoiding me. I briefly considered a strategic retreat to catch my bearings and try again, but as I noticed Paprika's wings positioned in preparation to fly, her panicked demeanor, and my grandmother's annoyed look, determination set in and I clenched my jaw. This ends now. I held my breath, then leaned forward the furthest I could, extending my arm, and finally, I gently grabbed Paprika in both hands. Lifting her up, I quickly crossed the kitchen and the living room, deposited her back into her cage, and closed the door. The disgruntled bird immediately began preening her ruffled feathers, losing all interest in what had been an extremely emotionally invested struggle not even 10 seconds ago. I, on the other hand, rode on the high of success. In the kitchen, my grandmother rolled her eyes. Today, I relished in the success of a hard-fought battle. Tomorrow, there will be more clashes to conquer and cockatiels to challenge. Tomorrow will bring more challenges and struggles to overcome, but at least for today, I have won. Thank you. Please welcome Cole to the stage.
What's up, guys? Shout out to Miss Kelly's 4th period class. I was gonna have a sick line to come up and say something, but I'm lame, so I don't. All right, here we go. So this is called Inner Belief. It's more of a motivational piece for all you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cole Ratliff, and I always believed I was destined for greatness. For the longest time, I couldn't understand why. Many great mentors and teachers helped me shape my mindset into what it is today. Everyone as a kid always has dreams and ambitions of things they want to achieve when they grow up. Whether it's being a famous actor or to be a doctor, those same dreams we once had are overcome by voices. We listen to these voices that tell us that we won't make it big. As these voices become more intense and frequent the older we get, we start to listen to them. That's where successful people differ from the average man. They form their own path and ignore these voices that discourage them from reaching their full potential. I was truly blessed to be able to have the opportunity to be taught by Mr. Patton last year. His leadership style in class really changed my whole aspect of life. One thing he told me is that we all have an inner critic inside our head. This critic is usually never positive and stops us from embarrassing ourselves. How can we evolve and grow if we never become uncomfortable, he said. Doing something like going before a large crowd would scare me to death. I cared so much about what people would think about me if I failed or messed up. And yet here I am before all of you telling my mind that I do what I want to do. I did not seek approval from my friends or my family. Instead, I told myself, you are going to do this. You are not going to think about all the horrible possible outcomes that could derive from this speech. Instead, you're going to use your mindset and voice as a way to spread a positive message that other people could appreciate and understand. My favorite rapper and musician is Logic. Some of you may know that already. A quote I love to live by day to day is when he said, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than be loved for who I am not." If having other people's opinions on your life ultimately are the same ones making decisions for you, then take a step back and assess. Who am I doing this for, and do I really want to do this? We all try to seek approval, all for a little attention. But at what cost? We only get one life and one body. It's yours and no one else's. So stop letting others get into your mind. Be confident in yourself and your abilities. If you aren't confident in yourself, start taking steps in the right direction to total confidence. Every day I wake up, I have the same mentality of going all out. I constantly stay in an all-out mindset so other opinions don't sway me. Instead of saying phrases like, I'm going to, or I am, start saying, I will. I will be good one day. I will be a famous athlete. I will be proud of who I become. Become 100% committed to whatever you do. Decisions will become undeniably easy that way. Society only wants quick fixes and begins to develop their backup plans. But plan B is only a distraction from plan A. Stop thinking about what could go wrong and put all your attention to what can go right. Whatever your gut tells you is your calling, go for it. Raise your hand if you've heard the phrase, follow your dreams. Yeah, pretty basic information, but it's also the most important information that you could possibly receive. The average lifespan is 73 years old. Imagine being trapped 30 to 40 years doing something that you never loved doing, being chained to a job or a lifestyle that only makes you miserable. I hear all too often in my family reunions, I wish I could go redo my career. I wish I could have, followed my dreams back in the day. I guarantee that sounds familiar. If you are being forced into a position of unhappiness by your friends or family, You need to have a realization. This life is too short to be unhappy. It's all about it's all about what you want to do. And it all starts with inner belief. I want to take this opportunity to express how awesome it was to come up in front of you guys and be able to spread a message of wisdom that I had stored up. I wanted to have a topic that anyone, regardless of who you are or what you've done, could take and learn from. Start visualizing your future and how your path will be paved. It's not going to be easy. It's actually going to be quite the opposite. But why not put your head down and grind so that one day you can be on top of the world, just like your younger self would have wanted you to be. Thank you. Next up is a Kopek.
Hi guys, I'm Izza. Shout out to my fourth period, wherever you are. I love you guys. Shout out Bailey McCarthy, my bestie. This is this is a poem I wrote. It's kind of corny, it's kind of cheesy. It's about love and stuff. If you're not into that, I'm sorry. But here goes. It's called Footprints. It's only 7 or 7:30 maybe, but it's a chilly winter evening. Outside, it's cold and dark and snowy. Cars drive down dimly lit suburban streets, scattering icy slush. But inside, we all drift in the warm glow of your kitchen, and the soft hum of the dishwasher, and the gentle murmur of some criminal investigation show on the TV. I go to sit in one of my favorite spots in your house, in the dining room, in front of the big window that faces your backyard. The whole room is dark, filled only by the glow of your neighbor's Christmas lights outside. Dust collects on the curves of the old grand piano in the corner, its keys chipped and wearing thin. I study the peaks and valleys of your face, your eyes, your smile, as you sit down next to me in my solitary heaven that's not so solitary anymore. We huddle up together, sitting only inches away from the window. We scan the snow outside, looking for animal tracks. We whisper, telling each other jokes and giggling as we press our faces up against the glass. We finally see some little footprints that look like they might belong to a raccoon, or maybe a skunk or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert. We sit in front of that window for a really, really long time. Or maybe it wasn't very long at all. Maybe it was only a couple minutes. But maybe sometimes a moment can be so beautiful, so gentle and fleeting, like a snowflake in the wind, that when we commit this moment to memory, we stretch it tight, we expand it, pinning the corners of the fabric up on the wall so that we'll never forget it. And we hope that the feelings we felt in that moment will never really fade. Even when the seasons change and the Christmas lights get taken down, we like to hold on to these fleeting moments, those memories we've made, in dimly lit rooms, in front of big, foggy windows, beside the people we love. We like to think that maybe, just maybe, we'll do the same thing next year. Thank you. Up next, we have Jill.
So I also wanted to shout out Miss Quinn's class. So I originally wrote this as my personal statement for Clemson. So when I turn 18, the first thing I'm going to do is get a tattoo. As someone who struggles picking what to wear in the morning, I assumed deciding on a tattoo would take me hours, days even. There's also the fear of regretting it the rest of my life and my dad being upset with me that I got one. But ever since I went on a mission trip the summer of 2019, I've known that I wanted to get 3 small butterflies on the outside of my left ankle. On this mission trip, we got the opportunity to travel to West Virginia and repair houses for those in need through an organization called Appalachian Service Project. Every day, groups of 7 to 8 people would ride in a van to our chosen family's home. My group repaired their kitchen and installed an AC unit. It was incredible to bond with the family and see the look of excitement on their faces once they realized their home would be functioning again. After a long day of work, we would go back to the church we were staying at and eat dinner with the rest of the groups. My friends, Natalie and Rachel, and I would share stories about the day while we snacked on our food. On the second to last day of the trip, Natalie told me a story about her homeowner that I will never forget. With fixing up the roof, her homeowner was working on the garden. After they had finished working, she invited their whole group into the garden. She explained how she and her daughter, who had passed away, used to care for the flowers. After her passing, her mother started to see butterflies pop up around the garden every time she walked in. She took that as a sign that the butterfly was her daughter watching over her. And while she was sharing that story about her daughter, a butterfly landed on her shoulder. Ever since I heard that story, when I see a butterfly, I think of the people I've lost in my life and feel as though they're watching over me. During the span of 15 months, in my freshman and sophomore years, I lost 3 people who I cared about. I really struggled trying to figure out how to keep their memory alive. But after my trip, I had no trouble deciding that I want to get 3 butterflies tattooed on my ankle. 1 in orange, 1 in purple, and 1 in blue. Those were their favorite colors. And these butterflies will forever remind me that they are always close to me. And so, even if my dad does not like the idea of me getting a tattoo, I know this is something I will never regret. Thank you. And up next is Tanya.
Okay. Shout out to my parents who are watching the stream right now. Shout out to Mr. Dawson who read this way back during virtual learning, and shout out to Miss Quinn's 4th period class. You guys are so cool. All right. This is a memoir. When I was younger, I would stand in the visitor center and sift through the brochures before my family and I ventured onto winding trails on our hikes in the mountains. One of my favorite brochures to look at was one titled, "What to Do When Confronted by a Bear." Such brochures still exist today, but are much more rare as the Smoky Mountains have attracted exponentially larger crowds each year since my visit as a child. More crowds means less peace and quiet, and less peace and quiet means a decreased chance of a bear sighting. Now, don't get me wrong. I wholeheartedly agree with the majority of the Earth's population when it comes to being afraid of large, hostile mammals. But there's something majestic about being able to view a family of black bears in the wild from a distance. It was the summer of 2019, and the last day of my family's stay at our cabin up in the mountains. So, naturally, we were loading up our car to get ready for the 12-hour car ride back home. Once the bags were all loaded, we started tidying up the house to make the housekeeper's job as easy as possible. My mom had emptied all the smaller trash bins in the house into 2 larger trash bags and left them on the front porch. Big mistake. The owner of the rental called to confirm our checkout, and we were finally ready to set out on a 12-hour car ride back home. My mom opened the door to leave and noticed something strange. One of the trash bags was missing. She swore she left 2 bags out on the porch. She came back inside and asked the rest of us if we had moved the trash bags or if we were playing some kind of practical joke on her. None of us had. So my mom went back outside to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Then we heard a loud scream, and my mom came running back inside out of breath and pale in the face. "There's a bear outside the cabin right now," she said as she gasped for air. My dad's sister and I were in complete disbelief as we hadn't seen a bear out and about in those mountains for such a long time. Still not convinced, my dad and I creaked open the door to peek outside onto the porch. Nothing. I walked close behind him across the porch, and we stood at the edge of the steps where, lo and behold, a decent-sized black bear was sitting at the bottom eating our leftover takeout from the night before. Suddenly, the bear looked up and locked eyes with us. We were way too close for its comfort. It stood up slowly, and then suddenly and very quickly started running up the stairs towards us. I don't think I've ever run as fast in my life as I did on that day. We all scrambled back up the stairs and into the cabin where we shut the door just in time. Okay, now what? There was a bear sitting outside at the bottom of the porch steps in our driveway. It was having a feast in front of the exact car that we needed to drive back home. So we needed to figure out a way to scare it away. Now, there's an old saying that goes back for years when it comes to bear confrontation. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, back down. And if it's white, say goodnight. Since we are dealing with the black bear, we had a pretty good idea of how to scare it away. We had to make as much noise as possible. We tried everything from screaming to the top of our lungs to stomping on the hollow porch steps. Nothing worked. The bear didn't even look up from its meal, let alone budge from its position. Finally, my dad somehow found a giant industrial grill spatula and started hitting it against the house. I'm not sure if it was the loud noise in general or the fact that the sound resembled a gunshot, but the bear finally ran away into the nearby woods. Even though we were still scared the bear would return, we frantically picked up all the garbage scattered around the yard. Before we left, we made sure to leave the trash inside the house this time. To this day, my family still looks back and laughs about the situation. Of course, at the time, getting chased up the porch steps by a wild animal was insanely scary. But hey, at least it made for a great story. Thank you. Next up is Maya Longo.
All right. Hi. Anyway, hi. Shout out to LeBeau's class up there. Very tired claps. Anyway, so I'm actually going to be singing a song about, you guessed it, trauma. But I find that the best songwriting comes from traumatic situations, and in this case, mine is the entirety of 8th grade. So I ended up finding one of my 8th grade letters. Raise your hand if you had to write one of those letters to your future self. A lot of us. Yeah. I thought mine would be kind of a joke, like, hey, what's up, you failure? But that's not what I found. I found something that hurts a lot more. So this song is based off that. Hold on. Feels like this always start with writing prompts. Something to start your freshman. They took off the letters long after you forgot. A way to look back on who you same key. Okay, how about another round of applause for that period? Great job, guys. Okay, let's get some questions. Questions for this group. Come on, what do you want to ask them? Oh, right here. This girl's not. Okay. Hold on. Question is, why did you name your bird?
Paprika. Okay, so you know the little there's I think it's Mrs. Salt and Mr. Pepper from Blue's Clues, and they have a little kid named Paprika. My mom thought that was a really cute name, so we were like, it's Paprika, and we like call her like Pap for short. So yeah.
A little spicy name. Questions? The girl next to you has a question? Yeah, come on, girl in the green. Oh, she loves paprika. Awesome. It's pretty spicy. Okay, I'm going to get my questions out. Let's see. If you could hang out with any actor or writer, who would it be? Actor, writer, musician, I guess, too.
Bo Burnham.
Probably Tom Holland, because he's a cutie.
I don't know, probably Dominic Fike.
Taylor Swift.
Ariana Grande.
Since someone already said Taylor Swift, I'm going to go with anyone who's written a musical that's on Broadway.
Okay, awesome. So Lynn, Manuel, yeah? Yep. Yes, okay. Let's see. Ooh, I didn't ask this. Oh, we got a question? Good. Yes. Jill, did you get into Clemson? I love that girl's voice. It's very raspy. Right here.
Not yet. The decisions don't come out till mid-February, so I'm still waiting on that one. Thank you.
That's the manifest question. Come on. Here's the question I wanted to ask them, but they deterred me from that. If you could manifest one thing into your life today, Jill, what would it be? It could be as simple as chicken nuggies, whatever you want.
Improving my math grade.
That would be my answer.
I don't know. That's a really good question. Probably everything.
I guess my answer has to be getting into Clemson now, so.
Yeah. This is kind of sappy, but like, just like all my good memories to like remember them forever.
This is not sappy. I wish I had a Wendy's 4 for $4 right now. The new Wendy's fries are so good. If you haven't tried them, go try them.
Yeah, no, Wendy's fries is a good point. I have to agree with you there.
Okay. What are you, do we have any questions? Because mine are getting lame. Any questions? Oh, right here. It's hard to see, just so you guys know if you've never been up here. Go ahead. Okay, let's just do this one fast. Favorite color?
Like seafoam green.
I like that.
I like a light blue.
Gray.
Blue.
Black.
I've got 3: blue, yellow, and green.
Hey. Okay, if you, what's your, what are you guys Netflixing right now? What are you streaming? What's like the show to watch? Because I'm always looking for suggestions.
Okay, so I don't watch Netflix, but I have been watching the Critical Role podcast.
I've been watching The Bachelor. I'm just really disappointed. I'm really disappointed with Clayton's decision as far as women go.
I just finished Cobra Kai, but I also recommend The Good Place.
Cobra Kai is good. I'm really excited for season 4 of Stranger Things. It's long overdue. I'm getting impatient, but yes, Stranger Things.
Ninjago on Netflix.
The Great British Baking Show.
Oh, okay, British baking. We got a question up here. Yeah. Cole, what's your max bench, bro? What is it? Do you want to tell him? Who asked? Brandon. Like, there's 82 of them at the school. Brandon who? Brandon who? Wozniak. Brandon Wozniak.
I don't know. Probably like 100 pounds. But no. If you're really asking, it was 245.
245. Cole benching. Okay, are we good? Okay, we're good. Great job today, guys. Good job, guys. Awesome period. Do you bench? Cole, what's
Hi. Yeah, people snuck up and turned off. Hi, Vikings in the house. I'm Mrs. Mineo. If thank you. I'm getting some love, but if you don't know me, it's because I transferred just last year from Conant, and I specifically chose to come to Fremd from Conant for Writers Week. So that tells you the power of what happens here in this auditorium every year. So it's truly with great joy that I get to introduce these brave students behind me today, and the best way that we can honor their voices is by silencing and putting away our devices to be present with them. Thank you, student audiences, for your amazing presence for the past day and a half here in Writers Week. Thank you to the boosters, your parents, for their support, and our administration for their support in making this event possible from year to year. Thank you for the tech crew for hustling up there. And thank you to Mr. Anderson and Miss Enck for all the work they do behind the scenes to make this possible for us as well. And I am now honored to share the stage with and introduce my student, the immensely talented and worldly Maya Zimmer.
Hello, my name is Maya. Shout out to Miss Mineo's 5th period class. And yeah, this is just something I wrote. It was bound in blue cotton fabric and brown embroidered dandelions. Out of boredom or nostalgia or some deeper longing, I had wandered into my basement and started skimming through photo albums. This particular one had caught my eye. I had seen it before, but I couldn't quite remember when. There I am on the first page, all 3 feet of me covered in the remnants of a SpongeBob popsicle. There's a series of photos of me posing for the camera with a stern expression, staring intently at an essay I wrote entirely in scribbles. A Visit to the Zoo features me in a shirt so big it reaches my knees and a pair of Velcro shoes with ruffled white socks. Written on the inside cover of the photo album in cursive reads, "To Maya, 2009, with love, from your nanny, Christine." My early childhood was characterized by a rotating cast of nannies coming in and out of my life to fill the gaps where my sister and I needed to be looked after, but my dad was busy working. My mom died from breast cancer a month before my 4th birthday. I've known grief for so much of my life that it has overflowed and folded over and strewn me about. My grief has limbs. Sure, it is sad, but it is also frustrating and exhausting and boring. It is a self-deprecating joke about illness. It is the piano that sits in my living room unplayed and out of tune, yet impossible to give away. It is a silent pull to the basement to look through photo albums on an ordinary Sunday afternoon. And God, this grief of mine is curious. Who was my mother? Why do I miss her? Would it be easier if I just forgot? Christine was one of my first nannies after my mom died. She had wavy chestnut hair and thick bangs and was a real mature adult. Looking back at these photos, though, she was maybe 23. There we are, smiling at the beach. She holds me up against her hip, and one of my arms is stretched out across her chest. In another, she giggles while coaxing me into a pool while I look disgusted by the prospect of going anywhere near it. In my favorite photo, we hold hands while running barefoot around her backyard. As I scoured through that book in awe, I was overwhelmed that I have barely any recollection of these memories. All I knew for certain was that her name is written with a capital C, Christine. In my head, she became a monument instead of a person. She was a calcified measure of time, but I have no recollection of who she actually was. A curly red-haired woman named Molly became my nanny after Christine, and she became a major influence in my childhood. Molly trained me to make my own school lunch. She taught my sister and I what a period was. My dad sent Molly an update when my sister moved into her first college dorm. Capital C Christine, on the other hand, became a blur. But then here was this photo album. How breathtaking that even in the gaps of my life where my memory fails, here is documentation that someone took care of me. How beautiful that someone made sure I feel loved all these years later. How astounding that so many people in my life have loved me into this moment. Christine and Molly have, My favorite childhood television show, The Electric Company, has. My friends have. The sun has. My mom has. Maybe this grief of mine has always been one way of loving them all back, an expression of gratitude for the love I have received but cannot remember. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Versteg. Shout out to Miss Marsh's 5th period advanced reading class. Today I'm going to be reading a letter to myself. Dear Alex, I understand that you have all of these people in your life telling you what you should do, what career path you should follow. Do what you love to do, not what you think you should do. If you don't know what that is or are not exactly sure, that's okay too. You have time to make your decision, whether you want to become a professional photographer, an elementary school teacher, or a pediatric nurse. The choice is yours. You and only you can decide what your future will hold. But enjoy the moments leading up. Hey, you've still got a whole 4 months until graduation, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Make the best of these 4 months and summer, because before you know it, it's off to college you'll go. Sincerely, your conscience. What do you want to be when you grow up? That's the question we've been getting our whole lives. We usually had some sort of picture in our heads. When I was 5, I said princess. When I was 10, it was the president. When I was 12, it was a teacher. And now at 18, I have to decide what I really want to be when I grow up, what I want to do with the rest of my life. Well, my answer to the question at 18 years old is, I don't know, and I don't need to know right now. Thank you. Next up is Mila Branson.
Hello. This is a poem that I wrote about my mom, who is the 9th of 11 siblings, and it's my interpretation of her childhood experiences and the stories she's told me. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 night out to the theater. Back at home, Barbie dolls and toy cars scattered across the floor. Rambunctious children running, with scribbled scripts on notebook paper handed out to each kid. Roles assigned as play practice begins. Costumes made of blankets or faded scarves, gleeful laughs as someone forgets their lines. The chaotic production rewarded by a standing ovation once the audience arrives. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 beautiful Sunday. Loving hands knead dough to perfection. Nona's broken English like a familiar song as she gently molds each piece. Warm glow of afternoon light pours through the window, illuminating the handmade pasta that decorates the dinner table. Neatly placed in endless rows, like the seemingly endless number of seats filled with family. The fragile shapes, still freshly floured, awaiting the boiling pot that prepares them. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 chilly winter. The mother examines cracked fingers before opening the bathroom cabinet and lathering on lotion to soothe the pain. Without speaking, she leaves for only a moment, returning with white church gloves. Taking each hand in her own, she slips on the covering, kisses her forehead, sending her daughter to bed. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 Christmas Eve. The lights on the Christmas tree casting a colorful spotlight on the father's cozy armchair. Wide eyes focus on the honey-smooth sound of each word. The timeless story still magical each year. Growing anticipation of the next morning's wonders dancing in the heads of each child. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 missing leg. A trucking accident, near-death experience. Athlete turned amputee. A metal bar became a lifesaver as he tried to unjam his machine, allowing him to pull most of his body out of harm's way. Yet the wooden prosthetic looks like the chestnut wood of the dinner table. 11 siblings, 2 parents, 1 missing leg, 1 cancer growing, lurking beneath the mother's beauty. Biding its time, unknown to the steady figure who wakes each morning, packs lunches and folds laundry, the rock and anchor quietly begins to crumble. 11 siblings, 2 praying hands, 1 missing leg, 1 midnight phone call. The dial ringing just once before someone picks it up. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Next up is Lena Barrett.
Hi, my name's Lena Barrett. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Miss Saeed's 5th period English class. I have 6 short poems that I wrote. None of them have titles, but one does. It's just the time and the place I wrote it at. December 25th, 2021, New York City. For no matter how long they had each other, there wasn't much time for his departure. Her thoughts did leave him, no matter how much he did crumble her mind. Crumbles turned to ash, and the ash turned to nothingness. She opened her eyes for another lover, but she opened them too wide, for then she saw him entering back into the thoughts she once knew as ash. Everything around me grows more dim the more I think. Why can't I be satisfied with the world around me? I'm picky with the ones I love. Give me space. You never give me time. There's too much time in the day, but once you slept off the clock, people move on to a different time bomb. I let my heart rot in pain. As I fall asleep, the screams echo in my head. Shallow is how deep I've sunk down to. The water is cold. Reminds me of your heart. I crave falling back into those arms, but I learned how to float at this level. As I turn my 5th page of every thought and question I've had about you, you sit there not being able to think of a sentence to write about me. The nights I've risked all for a speck of happiness to shine in your eyes is all in chapter 5. All the times you've lied to me are in chapter 6 and 7 because I got tired of writing them all at 8. Chapter 9 is about how you disrespected not me, but almost all of your friends. Chapter 10 is when you watched so many people give all away their energy just for you. One human being in one random town who helped, but in the end, destroyed fragile hearts. The cover of our time together is the day your life and my life tipped upside down. Probably don't remember half of our memories together. I don't either, now that you're dead to me. The whole world would know that I would kill for you and that you would kill for me. Why was I even in shock when I realized it was you causing all the pain splintering my heart? I do miss you, but as the old tale read, why miss someone who has no thoughts for you? You contain my thoughts, and I look for your energy in all other shadows for once you brought me light. That light blended around your face of shadow figures on your self-sculptured face and indeed grew thorns, blinding my world from darkness. Not in the way you focus on, because our brains don't share blood, they shed. Proceeding now as you cut the thorns from yourself, keep me tangled in this disaster we once called home, and continue to watch me from the distance I push you to, as I crumble into ash from the fire inside, matching us to fairness. Now may we both rest in peace with the flame still bright. It's just like one day he woke up and all he knew of the world was her. The only thing that can hurt him is her. He did drop everything for that girl, and his life does seem pretty peaceful. What's it about her, though? She's just an ordinary girl who passed time to time in the hall. See, he never used to look at her eyes. Now I can't help when he drowns in them. He seems to stress, I observed. He's more attached. That's rare, the crazy thing called love. Next up is Jillian Price.
I think that's okay. So my name is Jillian. Shout out. I would like to shout out my 5th period English class with Mr. Schaefer. Shout out to all you guys. It was a warm September morning. I had just entered the library sometime past 7 a.m., easily spying my friends seated at our normal table. I beelined as fast as possible away and went into the tutoring center. I hoped to grab a computer and print my chemistry lab report before a tired of teens appeared and left me with nothing but a loading computer screen. After successfully signing in and pulling up my lab, I was pumped I had made it so far in just a few minutes. As I pressed print, I faced my first paper jam, not being able to connect to the FHS black and white library printer. Instead of the library printer, some HP LaserJet Pro one kept popping up. As this printer wasn't in the near vicinity, I quickly dismissed it as useless. After pressing print about 10 or so times, and not seeing any results from the library printer, nor the imaginary HP LaserJet Pro one. With the sole purpose of finding a solution to my problem, I turned away from the monitor and walked over to the library printer. There I found a possible solution. Press the power button and turn on the printer. So I did just that and resumed my place in front of the monitor and with my finger ready to click print. I pressed print and voila, the FHS black and white library printer popped up, and willing my heart rate to go back down, I breathed out a sigh of relief as I waited for my lab. For a good minute, I sat silently congratulating myself on my problem-solving skills before realizing that the printer never started actually printing out my paper. I stood and cautiously approached the printer to check that the printer was in fact turned on. It was. I pressed print again and still no paper. I stood praying for some miracle when a teacher walked in and seeing my frustrated face aimed directly at the printer, and somehow knowing the pain I was experiencing at 7:20, walked over to the printer, opened it, and nodding to himself, walked away. Within seconds, he returned with printer paper, and a few moments later, I walked out of the tutoring center with a fresh, hot-off-the-press chemistry lab. Now, flash forward like 2 hours, I'm taking my seat in chem, proudly grasping my lab report, when in walks the printer teacher. Clearly looking for someone, he scans the room and finding me, walks over and drops a stack of papers in front of me. Confused by the interruptions, some of my classmates turn and stare at the stack. What's that? I have no idea, I reply. I start sifting through the stack, and I notice that the papers, they look pretty familiar. Apparently, the HP LaserJet Pro printer that I connected to earlier that morning was not imaginary, and did actually print my lab those 10 or so times I clicked print. With more labs than I could now count, I realized that perhaps I had been too good of a printer. One who prints, clicking that button so well that now had someone hand-delivering me my papers. I'm just kidding, but I resolved that from now on, I should ask a friend to print my labs for me, or better yet, take up my lab partner's offer to print the labs for me. Hoping to put the whole situation behind me, I knew there was only one thing left for me to do. Make a mental note to snoop around a bit and find that not-so-imaginary HP LaserJet Pro printer. Thank you. Next up, Akash Viravali.
First off, shout out to Mr. Schaefer's 5th period class. This is a lot more intimidating than practicing for my mom. I got some jokes in here, so please laugh. Fake it, play a fake laughing YouTube video, do what you gotta do, but everybody laugh, because if I say a joke and it goes dead silent, I might faint. You know, the transition from a private school to a public school was the weirdest thing. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing to ever happen to me. I was a cool kid back in my old school. We would take daily naps, and I'd get all the ladies to chase me during recess. My mom would bring me Oberweis chocolate ice cream after first grade class. Life was good. When I switched over and came from Hanover Park to Palatine, Illinois, I felt lost. My mom dressed me in a suit and tie on my first day of 2nd grade. I'm not joking, a suit. I was a little 2nd grader running around in an oversized black and blue suit, looking like I had a business meeting after school. I felt my heart drop on the first day of school, seeing the harsh reality that there was no dress code at public schools and seeing kids wear hats and sneakers while I stood out was a nightmare. Not only was I the quiet new kid, but I was the quiet new kid who already gave off a snobby private school kid vibe. Fast forward to class, I'm introduced to everyone, and that's where my new life began. I could say my transition into a new school was one of the hardest experiences, but I'd be lying. Truth is, I was met with open arms from a bunch of kids when I first moved. They knew nothing about me, and though all signs pointed to leaving me alone, they took me in. Even on the first day, they looked past the silence and the suit and we all instantly bonded over the one thing we are all so passionate about today: sports. Thank God I played sports, because I don't know where I would be if I didn't. Probably still walking around wearing a suit. I know I gotta let it go, but I just can't. I'm convinced my mom had it out for me. Back to the story. These kids were cool. They were the cool kids. They were dripped out in the finest athletic wear: Nike Elite socks, Jordan t-shirts and shorts, Nike Hyper Dunks. They seemed so cool, and I wanted to fit in. After our friendship started to form, you wouldn't be able to tell us apart. You would just see a bunch of kids running around the playground playing knockout to impress the girls, or two-hand touch football throwing Hail Marys every play. You could catch me wearing my at-home clothes, running in my bootleg J's every day until I put holes in them. We would walk back inside with our clothes stained green from the grass and our legs bruised and cut from the concrete, and acted like nothing ever happened. Life was back to being good. Over the years, we all started to separate. Each of us will branch out into different groups or different sports, but regardless of where we are and who we are with, our days together are not forgotten. Because it was those days together that made us who we are today. It sucks drifting away from your best friends over the years, but it's fine, because I'm pretty sure my mom still has all their mom's phone numbers, so I could always ask for a play date anytime. It was these individuals that helped shape me into the person I am today. They helped me find my passion, and so as I stand here today in my last year at Fremd, and one of the last places I'll be in the same place as my friends, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what has been and what's to come, because no matter where we all end up, our roots never change. So if I had to leave you with one piece of advice, it's to enjoy and cherish your time with your friends. Life is unpredictable, and it moves fast, and in the blink of an eye, you're opening your college acceptance letter to the next 4 years of your life. Take time to sit back and enjoy life with your friends, yourself, and most importantly, those who make you, you. Thank you. Thank you for laughing too.
I think he's still wearing that suit today. So I would like to invite any of our student writers, if you have another piece that you want to share. Does anybody have anything else that they want to share today? Please do, Lena. Want to stand up? Do you want to? Little Charleston. Lena, again.
Thank you. Okay. This is just something random I wrote, so it has like no backstory or anything. I wrote this at 5:12 p.m., November 19th, 2021. I sit in the midst of nature. The cold pours down my skin. I sit my hand on the thin layered water, separating my palm from my forearm. The world we only know with our eyes makes me feel fresh, not physically, but minded. I get out of the clear lagoon to stand on the muddy greens, reaching for my towel, and, oh, there's no towel. There's no clear lagoon, there's no fresh cold water on my skin. The world of a dark place filled with wrenched creatures. They disguise themselves as something clear, fresh, and new, but the clear isn't clear enough. That's it.
So in our remaining time, I have some questions for our students, and we can also maybe take some from the audience. So my question to you as writers, I think most people in this room associate writing with school and essays and assignments, and sometimes like the fear that goes with those things. And so my question to you as writers is, what would you tell your peers who feel that way about writing? What would you tell them to think of writing differently?
So you're asking what like advice we have for our peers about writing? Honestly, I would just say be yourself. That's probably my most, like the one thing I always follow. I always enjoy like sitting down and just writing, because I know I could just explain a story or just be myself and just put all my thoughts on the piece of paper. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I agree with what Akash was saying, but I think also writing can be a form of expression. So, like, if you're ever, like, feeling a certain way, I think writing is a great tool to kind of express that and also, like, create art. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think writing can help tell a story in that time and place of, like, how you're feeling. Or even if it's not your emotions, if you're kind of, like, feeling someone else's emotions in the way that makes them feel. I mean, writing is always just a story to me. I think it's really interesting in that way because it doesn't have to be your story. It can always be something. So I think reading really helps with my writing because that inspires me.
I think of writing, I've used it as like a coping mechanism, like just through the years. Like if I'm ever stressed or if I'm going through something, I'll use writing as a way to like just express my thoughts and my feelings, and that's what I really did with my piece. That's how I use writing.
I have a secret. I don't think I'm a writer. I don't write on the regular. I love when I do write, but like Miss Manea was talking about, like the fear of it holds me back a lot of the time, or I'm doing other things, and like I don't write nearly as much as I want to. So I guess I would just say that like if you don't think of yourself as a writer, you can still be a person who writes sometimes, and then just like do what you love. Yeah.
When I think of writing, I just think of all the endless possibilities you can put into one story. And I feel like, at least for me, writing is the one thing that I know will never leave me. Because you can write whenever. You can write on the subway. You can write during class. You can write, like, right when you wake up. You can write anywhere, and you can write about anything. And I think the fact of just holding on to that I know something will never leave me, it's, like, comforting. So when I go and sit down and write, I feel comforted.
Thank you for sharing. I've got one more, but this time I'll start with Lena because I'm closer over here. Lena, what's your favorite thing that you've ever written?
Trying to think. Probably, I was going through something. I don't know, it was probably like a few months ago. Something happened, and the first thing that came into my mind was, I need to write. Like, that was the first thing. I didn't even comprehend, like, what just happened. I was like, I need to write, get all my emotions out and everything. And I think that was, like, the first piece of writing I've written that, like, that I've just been like, wow, like, I can just, like, close my book and put it away. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I just never felt that way about any other piece that I've written, so.
I love that for you. I don't have a favorite thing that I've written, but I think that, like, there is a certain sort of, like, magic and, like, adrenaline rush of, like, writing something down and, like, feeling like you really like it, like, whether it's good or it's not, but, like, it really means something to you. I definitely experienced that, but I don't think I have a single piece.
My favorite thing that I've ever written would honestly probably have to be my college essay that I submitted. I wrote about when my sisters and my cousins and I were born, our grandpa gave us each a Disney princess to grow up with as a role model, and mine was Cinderella, and I've used her just like going throughout life, and just like she was a great role model to like look up to, even though she's a Disney princess. And I wrote my college essay about that, and I really like what I wrote, and yeah.
I'm not really sure I have a favorite thing I've ever written. I've written a lot of things. Maybe this piece that I just presented, because I took a lot of inspiration. Actually, I can thank Mr. Anderson for this. My freshman year, he read us a piece from David Sedaris, Me Talk Pretty, one day, and I just really enjoyed the way David Sedaris kind of wrote his memoir and his like attitude and tone throughout that whole thing. So I was kind of inspired by that. So I would say maybe this piece, just because I was really trying to emulate like a David Sedaris type humor story kind of thing, so I really enjoyed that. But other than that, I think my favorite story I've ever written was probably like when I was younger, just because I was so much more creative than I am now, and some of the things that came out of my brain and the way I read it now is like absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know if I have a favorite piece that I've ever written. It's pretty hard to choose, like, a favorite of all time, but something that really helped me was a couple years ago, I went through the passing of my grandmother, and that was, like, writing was just a way for me to kind of, like, experience catharsis during that time. So I wrote a series of poems about seasons, but it was actually more about, like, my experiences with my grandma. So that was, like, really helpful during that time, and then I also enjoyed the product of it, like reading it back once I had finished.
Believe it or not, I think I'd say it was my Common App essay. I think the prompt was like state something that that made you like sparked a moment of realization of yourself and others. I really enjoyed it because like not only was I explaining myself to the colleges, but I understood a lot about myself as I was writing that. I didn't really realize how much I've grown as a person since I entered high school until I started writing that. So it kind of just showed me a lot about myself.
Thank you. Do any of you student writers have questions for each other that you want to ask each other about your writing processes through the shared experience? Audience? um, no. Oh, not me, them. Yeah, we can do some electric slide up here. How are we doing on time, Mr. Anderson? Is it 3 minutes? Oh. Hi, sorry, I'm sorry. Okay.
What is, hello. What is your favorite genre of writing?
Favorite genre?
I like listening to podcasts. I think John Green's podcast, The Anthropocene Reviewed, is amazing, and I need to read his book about it. I just like memoir. Yeah.
Thanks, Mila.
I like journalistic writing. I write for the Viking Log at school, so it's been really fun to like be able to like interview people and then create a piece on that.
And if you like podcasts or journalism, we have a journalism elective class. Thank you, fifth hour. Thank you, writers.
Testing. Here we go. All right, day 2, second hour. Welcome to Writers Week again. Here we go. Let's get this going. Probably one of my favorite days today is because we have students all day, which is awesome throughout all the periods. Hopefully you're checking out the live stream on YouTube. It's pretty cool, so you get to watch your peers all day. A couple of shout outs before we get started here. First, boosters. If you have parents who belong to the boosters, please go home, give them a big hug, say thank you. We appreciate you and the support. Couldn't do this without them. Shout out to Mr. Anderson, Ms. Zank over here for all the hard work, getting all the people here, right? Round of applause for them. Okay, we're gonna get right into it. We have an awesome lineup here for you. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So the first one we have here, let's give a round of applause for Shruti.
Hi, I'm Shruti and I'm a junior here. So I want to start off with a shout out to Mrs. Eng's 6th period AP Lang class. You guys are the best. And then also a shout out to my mom, who was worried that this piece was about an embarrassing family story, or worse, something that would hurt my college chances since this is on YouTube. But I think you'll like it, Mom. So this is a piece I originally wrote for a practice college essay for Mrs. Eng's class, and I switched it up a little for the occasion. The human body uses over 100 muscles in the lips, tongue, and roof of one's mouth to speak. If just one of these muscles is injured, a human may struggle to talk at all. Hours after my birth, the doctor informed my parents that I was born with a soft cleft palate. In a different country, in a different era, this birth defect would mean that I wouldn't be able to swallow food or breathe while I ate, resulting in an early death. Fortunately, surgeons stitched the back of my mouth together at 6 months old, and I was well on my way to a healthy life. Babies with cleft palates sometimes grow up to have issues with speech, but I talked early, and boy, I talked. Photos of me as a toddler, all of my mouth half open in them, small dimples piercing my cheeks as I babble to the photographer. My mother's favorite home video features me as a grinning toddler, critiquing the costumes and rating the newest Bollywood movie to my father. My friends tell me that I talk in my sleep, complaining about math homework, and my boss's insistence that I stay to clean up. When I started elementary school, I didn't know that I possessed a little whistle in my voice, a squeaky, nasally tone. It had gotten worse as I grew, and it was apparent to my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Kokanig, that as much as I loved to talk, my classmates struggled to understand me and talk back. So I started speech therapy. My speech therapist told me to breathe deep and talk slowly, and to repeat myself with a smile as necessary. When I told her I was scared to share my penguin project with the class, she told me, "You're going to be just fine, Shruti." I held the vowel flashcards close to my chest like a prayer, hoping she was right. Slowly, I learned how to hide the whistle in my voice. I loved talking, communicating, and telling stories, but I grew tired of repeating myself. Despite filling up diary after diary, I hated presentations and speeches and began hiding my writing away. The opinionated little girl I once was grew to resent audiences in fear of how they would see me, or worse, hear me. I started out high school hoping to reverse this course. I had dreamed of being a lawyer, and while I loved poring over Wikipedia pages for Supreme Court cases and writing papers for my English classes, I feared that I hadn't mastered public speaking. I decided to sign up for my school's debate team. My first tournament went terribly. As I stood at the front of the room staring at my audience, I felt blank. I forgot to breathe, I forgot to look down, and I forgot to talk slowly. When my speech ended, my stomach turning and my neck warm, I ran back to my seat. I watched other kids string together sentences of elegant arguments, wondering why I couldn't do the same. I had so much I wanted to say, but when I stood up to speak, I felt like the 2nd grader that was terrified of her class. That entire year, I couldn't get rid of the similar fear that paralyzed me before each speech. Coupled with a painful, traumatic freshman year full of loss, I felt like I was locked into a box where I couldn't talk, both in tournaments and outside of them. I dreaded talking in class more than I did before I even started high school, and I was losing who I was. I began to wonder if I was ever meant to be a lawyer, or anything at all, if I couldn't tell people about the ideas inside my head. Who would want to hire someone who only wanted to write speeches, never deliver them? The summer before my sophomore year, I was terrified to return to school. I spent hours lying in my bed, watching the ceiling fan spin, feeling sick at the thought of standing in front of a room and debating. On my first day back, I saw a post for Fremd's speech team. I figured that it wouldn't hurt to start afresh. It would turn out to be one of my finest decisions. In my first meeting, what event do you want to do? My speech coach probed. I get to pick? I asked. She stared at me for a second, answering with a simple, choose your own adventure, Shruti. Over the next few weeks, I created my speech, spending hours researching, writing jokes, and practicing in the shower. Whenever I'd voice any concern at how my speech would go, my coach would tell me to pretend I was explaining my topic to someone I loved. I learned that I had so much more to say about the world than I let myself say before. The only thing I remember today from my first tournament is the hammering of my heart before I went on, and the message pulsing through my body as I entered my conclusion. You're doing it, I thought. You're actually doing it. For the first time in years, I had been excited to speak. I thought back to the conviction that my speech therapist had when she told me I was going to be just fine. She was right, I decided. Years flew by as I grew into a speaker that would look at her audience not with apprehension, but with excitement for the moments to come. As young children, we are enamored with the sound of our own voices. Whistle or not, every word I spoke as a child was wondrous to me, and I had lost that wonder as I grew up, letting myself become worried about how others felt about how I said what I had to say. But see, while the human body depends on 100 muscles to talk, I was born with one entire body part functioning incorrectly. I'm lucky to have been able to say my first word, not to mention the thousands of words that would follow. Before I told myself that my words didn't matter, I had to remember that I had been bestowed the gift of speech. As I stepped away from the podium that day, I promised myself that along with breathing deep and talking slowly, I would learn to be proud of all I had to say. Please put your hands together for Amanda Kavatna.
Hi, I'm Amanda Kavatna. So shout out to my 6th period English class from Mrs. Wadala. They're awesome. Okay, and then also shout out to the poor girl that I asked about BC yesterday. I'm so sorry, but I did some FBI work and I totally found him. Yeah, okay, sorry, but I know who it is now. Okay. This piece I wrote sophomore year. It was a shareable draft for my English class. The prompt was for Frankenstein, and it just was reflecting back on how Frankenstein viewed himself. So this is called The Mirror Looked at Me Funny. The girl through the glass gave me a stare. It's unclear if it was a glance, a glimpse, or simply a glare. She looked and she peeped at me up and down. I could tell she was holding back a desirable frown. Her gaze first locked on my very cramped hips, but slowly it shifted right up to my flimsy lips. Her face transitioned from orderly to cringe when she compared my rugged hair to a cowboy's fringe. She gazes around to meet my small chest. Mutually, we agree that it really won't impress. All at once, we find each other's miserable eyes. All for water, wallow, and weep. Together, they cry. Your teeth are not straight in a row, she says to me, as if I don't already know. You slouch too much, and your butt's pretty flat. I'm starting to regret having this little chat. She fawns over my chin until she realizes there are 3. It takes her a moment to realize she hates being me. The glasses on my face leave indents on her nose. At this point in time, I feel overexposed. She compares my bony wrists to disfigured bendy straws. She scans me again and again to find even more flaws. The gap between my thighs is way too wide. The insults will never stop until she is satisfied. My cereal box body isn't good enough for her. Why can't we go back to the way things were? When I was little, this girl never called me ugly. But now, everything she sees on me is less than lovely. The girl through the glass doesn't really like what she sees. She says my armpits are fat and there's ash splashed upon my knees. The window between us couldn't be any clearer because the pain separating us two was just a mirror. Thank you. Up next is Zaha.
Hi, my name is Zaha Zehra, and I'm a sophomore. Shout out to Ms. Weidig's 6th period English class. Today I'll be reading a poem called A Shadow of Someone Who Once Was. It's about a girl who went on a very dark path of drug usage. I see her every day, but unlike her past self, now she's different in every way. The way she looks and the way she talks, it's left me in utter shock. What a strange thing, this addiction. It makes everything appear fiction. It makes people want to never stop, and they start taking drugs like a child eats a lollipop. It changes them and makes them want to stop living, and it's so incredibly unforgiving. There's no way of undoing what this horrific thing has the capability of doing. It drains the life away from her eyes. My heart throbs as it cries. I'm so bewildered, so confused. I wish drugs never existed and that they were never used. I don't want her to fall into a deep, never-ending abyss of agony, of pain, of suffering, and of darkness, because when someone doesn't desire to live, there's no reason for them to be resistive. I feel so helpless. Everything's a mess. I've never been around such a person. I don't know what to do as I see her conditions worsen. I want to tell her that this isn't the way to cope when you don't have any hope, when life becomes too hard to endure and nothing seems sure. This will still never be the right thing to do, no matter what it is that you're going through. But nothing seems to make her understand. The life moves as quick as sand, and this is not the way to spend it. To succumb to this fate, to let go of yourself and quit. This prison that she has created is a result of her own creation. She must realize that it brings nothing but devastation. I want to be of some use and stop her from this abuse, to change her to how she was before drugs took hold and put her in this constant war between being powerless and having control. The drugs slowly devour her soul in a way so brutal and cruel, turning any good person into a fool, making them completely blind, ruining their state of mind until they can't distinguish between wrong and right, and they fail to become victorious in this fight. What's left is just a shadow of the past. No one could know that this girl who changed so fast is the same as the girl I see now, because what's left is just a shadow of someone who once was. Thank you. Next up is Ali Ahunbayev.
Hello. Today I'm just going to read something from my journal. I write a lot of the time when it's hard to understand things, and it's been a while since I have, but I'm just going to share some things I wrote recently. Thank you. Shout out to Miss Weidig's class, 6th period. It's all felt quite dull lately, and I'm really uncomfortable with the weight of some prerequisites and uncertainties. They take away from the heart. There's been a great frequency of broken tempers, or I swear at my sister when I don't mean to, or start crying. It feels like my chest is slowly filling with smoke, and it proves a challenge to take a full breath and take in the vitality of the world around me. My circulation is out of sync with the rhythm of the world. I don't know what the way there looks like, and I don't think that I ever will. As I take my awkward steps, it seems apparent more than ever that others know better. There are many amazing people here with beautiful voices and keen movements. I wish I felt as calm as them. In the meantime, I remain distracted with childish questions and efforts to make sense, efforts that jounce around to no tangible conclusion. It's terribly loud and irritating. In recent memory, my days are filled with half-hearted investigations in stoic philosophies and self-improvement pills. And I try to pick up whatever saving grace comes along. Time is passing straight through me during all this, and I'm missing it all. Behind my peripheral vision, I can feel the water within my cell inching to my neck. And once again, it's hard to breathe. I really don't want to stay like this. And so I decided to swim in the dark with no compass other than my soul. And it proved to be a handy compass at that, as what do we have here? A ball of light lies straight ahead, growing in diameter as the distance closes. And a mighty plunge straight in grants me departure from the cell, and the walls of confinement vanish, and the flood that once drowned me spills out and rises to join the clouds above. Oh my God, what a sight. The air is spry and tastes so good. It dances through my veins and touches each nerve, and its sweet brilliance at last. Amidst all the former confusion, what saved me from it was music, was dance, the willow-treed lake behind the neighborhood, and the forest of beauty beyond the stone gates of scrutiny. How easily beauty could be found here. And I was simply overjoyed to look at the calm sky of painted clouds and dotted stars, and cried a grateful tear. By God, was this song fantastic. How could I have forgotten? And how do I keep forgetting? So often I notice that melancholia arrives like clockwork, and it's scheduled regularly in my days with hospital examinations and trimming my toenails. All I can hear is the cerebral chatter, and it's absolutely maddening. All I can hear is the flaws and the excess and the lacks thereof, and I'm cut from distasteful grain and ought to change and prove that I'm good and deserving. I sat in front of the bathroom reflection, exhausted of trying to rid my face of impurity, tearing the reddened marks and trying to extract all the dirt, flattening the bridge of my nose until the mirror demonstrates someone impressive. All that's revealed, though, is an ugly, bloody mess, trudging through as though life were a problem to be solved, rather than a mystery to be explored. The beggar who looks at me is lacking and desperately needs an understanding that the world presented right now is enough. In trying to figure out depressive unknowns, the troubled soul forgets the sufficient number of certainties that allow the enjoyment of life. As Albert Camus puts it, to feel one's ties to a land, one's love for certain men, to know there is a place where the heart can rest. There are already many certainties for one man's life. The breeze is cool and the sky blue. I love this life with abandon and wish to speak of it boldly. It makes me proud of my human condition. Yet people have often told me that there's nothing to be proud of. Yes, there is. The sun, the sea, my heart leaping with youth, the salt taste of my body, and this vast landscape in which tenderness and glory merge in blue and yellow. Melancholy is regular, and the remedy for it does not lie in solving it altogether, but each time it comes across you, to leave it behind, to explore what is beyond, following the light, the voice of the eternal now. It tells us that these moments, a beautiful song, the smile of a loved one, how she looks in the rain, these moments are all we have, and they make it worthwhile. This is our salvation. The self, the place where we live, is a place of illusion. Goodness is connected with the unself, to pierce the veil of selfish consciousness and join the world as it really is. The self is a chance we have been given, not to be dissected and disinfected, but appreciated. We are given a chance through which everything else that is beautiful is to be felt. Each time that I enter this state of bored, sad purgatory, although it seems or sounds bad, it's quite easy to get out of it. All I have to do is take a walk and listen to a song. And as I said, these moments are what show us that life is worth living. One of the songs that were paramount in these moments is one by a talented man by the name of Jacob Collier, titled Make Me Cry. And his British voice is a lot better than mine, but it goes something like this. In every sea there's a mouth of a river where waterfall ridges flow down. Why do they cry? No one knows why. In every laugh is the sorrow of all of the tears that you've held for so long. Would you make me cry? Oh, let me run dry. In every soul is the need to grow older, to speed up the passing of time. I don't know why, but it makes me cry. Thank you. Next up is a friend of my friend by the name of Trinity Martin.
Hello. Shout out to my English class who is not here right now because I got moved, and to my sister who went through all the iterations of this poem as I changed it 5 days before Writers' Week. So here is a guide to writing poetry. Pick up your pen and fill the ink cartridge with whatever feels necessary. Fill your pen with blood, honey, tears, poison, saline, gold, sand, pain, hatred, melancholy, regret. Fill up your chamber and dig your roots in the page with your pen strokes. Tear the sentences out of your throat and sew them into your stationery. Shout at the walls and write down only what echoes back to you. Stick punctuation on the page like stickers, hearts, stars, smiley faces, and semicolons. Look to the stars and let them decide the structure, shining and sparkling for every stanza. Collage your words together until they make no sense, until the incomprehensibility of your words makes it comprehensible, until the chaos of your words brings a calm order, until it dies a messy death and is reborn feeling alive and whole. Spin a web of words like arachne, like it's your only form of communication, like the spirals in the silk are all you have left. Write until your fingers are raw and you are hollow of expressions, empty of imagery. Write until your poem makes you cry, makes you laugh, makes you angry, makes you nostalgic. Write until your inkwell is dry and your words are broken. Put everything you have into a poem, everything you are. Self-destruct on the page because the explosions make for beautiful art. And then pick up the pieces from the rubble and start the next one. A guide to sharing poetry. Step 1, rip open your chest cavity and lay down on the dissecting table. Be a willing participant to your own destruction, nervous and yet hopeful. Hopeful to find someone who understands, who connects with what they read as much as you connect with what you write. So let them examine you and your words. Each muscle, stanza, tendon, each broken bone and semicolon, each damaged neuron and metaphor. And worry they won't understand, that you were vulnerable and too serious, and gave something you cared about so much to the wrong people, but be hopeful anyways. Let them write their thoughts over you in angry red ink, thank them for their suggestions, and try again. Step 2, present your still beating heart to them. Hold your breath as you wait for them to crush it, to laugh at your sincerity, to whisper to their friends. Tell yourself it will be different this time, but keep your hope buried deep inside you where it is safe, and wait for disappointment. Watch as nothing changes. Watch as the humorous poem receives a laugh, and keep trying. Step 3, the final step. Give them everything you have. Put your mind, body, and soul on display for them to see. Present every paragraph, every lyric, every poem you've ever written for their approval. Pray your words mean something to someone other than yourself. Understand there are people who will understand, and understand there.
Something with how she approached her worksheets, the little pieces of lessons she took home. An idea came to me as we worked on a packet discussing items at school. She needed to be surrounded by English, not just reading it. That day, we walked around the center, pointing and saying the names of items until she could recognize them. I helped her sit on tables, scribble in my boss's notebooks, and sneak my coworkers' pencils. Akari ended the lesson knowing all her words, and she knew them the next week and all the weeks following. We worked through the colors using a rainbow shirt of mine, scents as I made her smell different hand sanitizers, and colors and fruits, vegetables, and animals through the books we had. My boss and I found that Akari was building her vocabulary faster than ever, and her pronunciation developed at the pace her smile grew at. One day, I asked her a question. What's your favorite color? I expected that I would need to guide her through the answer. Akari, however, responded with a simple green. She never looked up, coloring away at her worksheet, but it felt like the world had shifted just a little bit.
Hello. Okay, so this is a second piece. It's my Common App. So it's like what everyone has to write when they want to go to college. So the prompt was describe an experience and then how it shaped you. Here we go. There's something about slapping shaving cream on a balloon only to have it scraped off by a blunt razor that is just so refreshing. Well, refreshing and peculiar. Even when somebody inevitably popped their balloon, my engagement never floundered. I remember absent-mindedly sitting in class as my nursing instructor gave us the rundown on the agenda for the day. She gave us the whole spiel about upcoming deadlines and study strategies, but nothing was compelling enough to keep me engaged. It wasn't until she started handing out pairs of latex gloves that my mind slowly descended from the clouds. Why on earth would we need gloves? I thought to myself, but surely that answer was only an explanation away. Today we are going to practice shaving patients and residents, and I will be handing out razors and shaving cream, and you guys will need to grab a basin and water. Shaving? How are we supposed to practice shaving when we don't have anyone to shave? Fortunately, she had that answer too, smiley face balloons. We were each given a rubber balloon that reeked of dollar store quality. As I used my musician's lungs to blow up my balloon, I looked around to see confusion plastered on all of my classmates' faces. As our cheeks turned red from inflating the balloons, the teacher began handing out expired shaving cream and disposable razors. The pieces started slowly to form a perplexing picture. Are we shaving balloons with razors? I carelessly put the balloon in a plastic bin to keep my patient from rolling away and lined up my supplies in a thoughtful order. I snapped on my gloves and began warming the foamy cream and with quick circular motions. I meticulously applied the foam to the supple rubber, careful to not get shaving cream in the inked-on eyes, and a crooked smile. The Santa Claus head smiling at me started to slightly melt my confusion. After replacing my cream-stained gloves, a little laugh crept up inside of me as I craned my head around the room to see everyone amassing globs of foam at the end of their razors. Okay, so this is for real. I began dragging the blade along the surface of the balloon, holding it steady by the forehead. As clumps of white began to form at the blade, I excitedly dunked them into the basin next to me. I kept going until little streaks of white were to be seen over the bright yellow that would have been an eyesore in any other context. I dampened the washcloth and wiped the balloon clean of all product. Admiring the exquisite work I had just done for my patient, I discovered a newfound passion. Thank you.
One last round of applause for our presenters today. Nice job. Well done.
Mic check, 1, 2, mic check. Hi, Fremd High School. Welcome to 7th hour on Tuesday. How are you? That sounded like somewhere in between great and not so great. Hey, look at it like this. If we get lucky enough to get like 8, 9, 10 inches of snow tonight, that would suck because you'd miss Writers Week, but also you could sleep in. So if you're in that in-between place, you'll be okay. I'm just trying to make it, all right, fine. Well, hey, big kudos to your parents if they are boosters. Please go home and thank them tonight for all their support. Also, if you see an administrator in the hallway, specifically Principal Langer or Mrs. Hughes, make sure you give them some love. Tell them thank you so much for allowing Writers Week to still exist, right, and be, because COVID has made things messy. However, it's so incredible seeing all of you here. So please enjoy today, enjoy the hour, enjoy one another, enjoy incredible students behind me, because they're the ones that have the courage to get up and stand in front of you and share something that one way or the other comes from their soul. So I like that. I think it's sweet. So first up, one of the best catchers in the history of Fremd High School, one of my favorite people of all time, Elena Krause.
Okay, so to start off, shout out to Mr. Tester's 7th hours. And for a little background, my friend Kat and I are doing a little something together where we both picked a word that are opposites from each other, and we wrote a little something telling you guys why we think our word is better. So thank you for listening. Tall is being what they call on top of the world. The most wonderful sights can be seen from up here. As many would argue, the peak of the mountain is more beautiful than the base, much like more pictures are taken at the top of Mount Everest than the woods around the bottom. The Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, the Willis Tower, or even a simple plane ride are all perfect examples of the way your perspective of the world is changed from a taller point of view. In that case, tall is being able to look back on everything you've accomplished. At the top of the hill, you can turn around and see the challenges that you faced to get there. You can see that although there were obstacles, you made it to where you wanted to be, and then you get the reward, the view. Tall is being included. When you're at the very top, everything is right out in front of you. You can see it all and experience everything. Nothing is being left out. Short, on the other hand, is limiting. You can only see what your eyes can reach. You could be missing a cloud that looks like a dog or a plane with a sign carrying, "Will you marry me?" All because you weren't quite tall enough to see. It is having no limitations. I'm sure we all know what roller coasters usually say. You have to be this tall to ride. That's right, being tall allows you to ride whichever ride your heart desires and no one is stopping you. Similarly, tall is not missing out. While a vertically challenged person may be blocked by someone's head at a concert or a camera at a wedding, height allows you to see over it and experience everything completely. Tall is putting the star on top of the tree. A tree is not complete without it. Whether you can reach all the way to the top or have to stand on a step stool, tall is being able to place that decoration and take a step back to admire the product of all your hard work. And last, but certainly not least, tall is helping someone reach the candle at the top of the shelf at Bath & Body Works because they can't quite reach it themselves, and you just happen to be standing right there. To conclude, tall is being more height, more experiences, and more opportunities. I know for sure that I can easily bend down and grab what I need at the bottom shelf, but without me, who would help Kat when she needs something at the top? Thank you, and here is Kat.
Well, hi guys. Shout out to Anderson and Ank for making this happen. Keschner, 7th Sports Lit, and Gerber, Kohler, Marsh, and Williamson. Imagine being able to see your favorite artist in the front row the minute he or she steps out, or reaching to the top of the cabinet to reach the cookie jar. Now think of the first word I just said. Yeah, that's right. Imagine. You'd think God would have been generous enough to at least make me somewhat a reasonable height. But no. Apparently he said, this one needs a couple inches off. No, actually just a little more. Maybe 1 more inch. All right, that's good. and left me not at 4'11", not 5'1", but 5 foot, exactly. Because it would have been too generous to give me at least 1 extra inch, right? Even though I may not necessarily have the best view in the world, for concerts, walking halls during busy passing periods, or at the zoo when the sea lions are doing circles at the window and tons of small children are at the front, believe it or not, I do have a ton of advantages. Hey Elena, let me ask you this. Do you still have the pleasure of genuinely playing on the playground and being just the right size to go on the monkey bars? And fitting on the equipment? Didn't think so. Yeah, and or being small enough to still look 12 years old and eat free at a restaurant? Didn't think so either. And at least my nicknames aren't Beanstalk, Oak Tree, or Giraffe. Even though there truly is no perfect height, you have to admit we need each other to balance everything out. Like gin and tonic, or roses and thorns, or even Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian? For what exactly? In volleyball, you need a libero to pass to the setter to pass to the hitter. Sharks have a symbiotic relationship with remoras. And lastly, Newton's third law. Every action has its equal opposite reaction, AKA you and me. Your height may be intimidating in a friendly way to others, and my vertical may never be taken seriously. Our heights still go hand in hand because I still need your help reaching for the spaghetti noodles on top. Thanks, everyone. And up next is Treasure.
To preface this, it's like a lot, very, very different vibe than what y'all just saw. So, if it's like depressing or whatever, my bad, I guess. But I mean, I don't apologize for writing it. Okay. Woman, mother. I think about motherhood. I weep of first, second, and third trimesters. I weep of the time stolen, the feet swollen, the backs broken, the wombs crying and twisting in pain as the baby takes his first breath. I weep for the loss of childhood as the child is given their childhood. I weep for the loss of personhood, of somebodyness, of personality or individuality, of freedom, of future, of something or someone, of anything or anyone, ever to witness a mother nurse and think beyond thought that she is a mother. Beyond the maternal nature of her hands as they caress the baby's cheek, beyond the coos and cries and ahs and oohs and the waking up late at night, I cry because I know, because I learned from a daughter who lost their daughterhood, that no smaller is a woman, no more relevant or less individual is a woman, no more is a woman than in the aftermath of motherhood. I used to be bothered by the sound of my mother praying at night. I used to hear her amens and hallelujahs and pull the covers up just a little higher. I used to complain to my friends I could barely sleep because she was just so loud. But with the wisdom I have now and the safety I've maintained, I've begun to understand why she had to be so loud. The monsters under my bed could hear her, and they shrunk a little every time. The monsters within me could hear her, and though they fought to stay, found myself swayed to always be awake or pray. My mother, my protector, my prayer warrior. There, but for the grace of God, goes my own mother, and by extension, myself. Next is it just V?
My name is V. I
preface this by saying I will briefly mention domestic abuse, so keep that in mind. I, like many of my South Asian counterparts, grew up hearing threats of being sent to boarding schools if I misbehaved. Well, like many 10-year-olds, I didn't think my parents would do it, and decided to not pay attention to them when they threatened to send me to a boarding school if I did poorly in spelling. Well, as a result, I got a C-, and I will forever be salty that there is a D in fridge and non-refrigerator. I quickly found out that my parents were dead serious and I was going to a boarding school halfway across the world. I like to describe 5th grade as a sword because although it had positive and negative experiences, only one side was sharp enough to leave scars. Don't get me wrong, I do have happy memories from there, but I was also 10 and had to learn to live on my own, halfway across the world from my family and everything I'd ever known. Both of today's stories require a little bit of background on how schooling works in India. Their school starts in June with summer break being in April and May, and the whole month of November off. The school I went to was the only school in a rural village on the outskirts of a big city, because of which it had a section of the school dedicated to the free teaching of the village kids. They only offered boarding school from 4th grade and up, and when I was there, the entire 4th grade was 6 people and 5th grade was 12. Because of the small class sizes, we spent a lot of time together and became very close to each other within a couple months, but not close enough to overcome fear. As I mentioned, we were located in a village, and at the time, honor killings were a usual occurrence. If you don't know what that is, I recommend you do a quick Google search. Many children were victims of sexual assault and abuse by family members. To combat this, a 12th grader made an animated short movie that showed a little girl getting abused by her uncle. It explained how she felt, that she wasn't the one to be blamed, and what to do if you were in that situation. Which was basically tell us, not your parents, because we had no idea of knowing if the parents would help the child or kill them. As heartbreaking as this was, it wasn't the worst part about watching this movie. The worst part was looking out the room at my classmates, my friends, as they watched it, because there was an unmistakable spark of recognition in their eyes. As I looked around the room, I knew they related to the girl in the movie, that they were in that situation before. Your world collapses a bit when something like this happens. I was 11, I knew the world wasn't a good place, but to have it shoved in your face in such a raw way is terrifying. When you're that young, you think bad things exist, but not for me, my friends, or the people I know. But that isn't the truth. The truth is the world is a cruel, cruel place, and you never know what cruelties a person has faced. 5th grade was a sword. It had many moments of fear and a lot of tears, but it also had its highlights. So here's a much more lighthearted story. Like I said, their school starts in June, so my first day of 5th grade would have been a couple days after the end of 4th grade. And I refused to do that and demanded a week of summer break, at least, and my parents let me. So I ended up at the school 2 weeks into the school year. I went to what was called an international school, which basically means during the school hours you have to speak English, but I was told that I could only speak English, period. Fun, and because I was from here, all my classmates assumed that I could only speak English. Fun fact, I'm fluent in Telugu and Hindi, so I could understand everything they said. For the first couple weeks, they would talk about me in front of me, which was more than a little funny. They made elaborate backstories for why I was there and spread rumors like it was their job. I let this go on for almost a month before I snapped. One day, as we were going to lunch, one of the guys grabbed my hair, which was in a braid at the time, and yanked it back so hard that I felt my hair being pulled out of my scalp in a Velcro-like fashion. And when I turned around, the guy had a whole huge clump of my hair in his hands. And I went off. I started yelling at him in pure Telugu. Just every swear, insult, everything I knew in Telugu came spewing out for about a minute. Like my grandmother must have possessed me or something, because I did not hold back. At this point, the whole class was circled around us and was just staring at me. I could literally see them reevaluating everything they had said around me for the past couple weeks. Here's the funny part, though. One of the kids behind me slowly scooted over to the other, and in Hindi said, "They probably don't know Hindi, right?" I quickly turned around, looked him dead in the eyes, smiled, and in Hindi said, "I think they do know Hindi," and I walked away. I walked away from a group of 10-year-olds in stunned silence. Once I came back from India, my relationship with my parents changed. I began to distance myself from them and slowly realized that I'd even begun to blame them for all my negative experiences. After all, they were the ones who forged the sword. I'll probably never be as close to them as I was before 5th grade, but I think I'm starting to heal, and maybe my relationship with them is too. Up next is Yasha.
Yeah.
My name is Yesha. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Mrs. Ank and Mr. Anderson for giving me this opportunity and for encouraging me, and Miss OD, for encouraging me to submit to Writers Week. So today I will be presenting a college essay I wrote for U Chicago, and the prompt was, "What's so easy about pie?" What's so easy about pie? The truth is, there is absolutely nothing easy about pie. As a home cook myself, I've only had the confidence to make chicken pot pie, but without the crust. I haven't been able to bring myself to make any other pie, and with good reason. First, you have to make the decision of choosing what type of crust you want, the basic buttery pie crust or graham cracker crust. Well, it doesn't really matter because either could result in disastrous outcomes. In the buttery dough crust, you have to choose, you have to make sure that you have cold butter, that it's fully incorporated into the flour, and that the water you use to combine all the ingredients are in perfect quantities. For a graham cracker crust, you have to use melted butter, finely crushed graham crackers, and the ability to mold the mixture into an even layer inside of the pie pan with the perfect thickness. In either scenario, if a food processor is used, then you have the inconvenience of cleaning all of its different parts. But if you make it by hand, then you have the inconvenience of wasting all that time and effort. Any mistakes in the formation of the pie crust could result in a possibly soggy, thick, or crumbly crust, and no one wants that. From flour magically appearing all over the kitchen counter to the arm workout of mixing the filling and forming the dough, making a pie is nowhere near easy. Okay, but let's say you have the crust part figured out. Fasten your seatbelts, here comes the filling. First, you have to decide which flavor filling you want. Do you want apple, pumpkin, blueberry, or something a little bit unique like a chocolate marshmallow or a rhubarb? There are so many options, but only one choice. After the mental dilemma of having to choose between all of the fillings comes the laborious process of actually bringing it into existence. The sweetness, tartness, and thickness of the filling all depends on the ratios between the cornstarch, fruit, and sugar. But the real tragedy is that the pie's taste can only be accurately tested after the pie is complete. There is no going back, so after you put it in the oven, you better pray to whatever supernatural force you believe in that the pie comes out even half decent. So what is easy about pie? Maybe it's buying it? Well, buying a pie may seem easy, but it's actually not. You have to first decide on which bakery you want to go to, what kind of pie you want to buy, what size would be perfect, and then which one looks the best. But even then, looks can be deceiving. How do you know which pie to trust? And if you buy a pie, is it really worth the money? Could your $15 be put to better use? Probably. Maybe pie isn't easy in a physical sense, but it doesn't get any better linguistically either. When you look at the word pie, it's a simple one-syllable word. Perhaps its pronunciation is what's so easy about it. But for someone learning English as a second language, pronouncing pie could result in some confusion. Pie ends with an IE, but so does brie. You know, the cheese? This could lead to awkward situations. It won't be a smooth experience for anyone if you walk into a bakery looking to buy blueberry pea. So is there anything easy about pie? After taking into consideration so many factors, I have come to realize that the only thing easy about pie is, well, messing it up. Thank you. Next up, we have Peter Mondis.
Hello, everyone. The names in this story are not real, but the events are, so yeah. The date was April 19th, 2021, and my 3 cousins and I had gotten in the car after a heated pickleball tournament. The reason we decided to leave was not just because it was almost midnight, but because Andrew wanted donuts. And since we took pickleball very seriously, it was not surprised that someone was hungry. The only problem was that it was midnight, so nowhere was open, but Johnny hatched a plan. Dunkin'. His plan was to go to Dunkin'. We were all confused. Dunkin' was closed. They closed at 11. How does he think that we're going to get donuts from Dunkin'? Are we going to bust down the doors and break in? Everyone was awaiting an explanation. They're closed, Andrew said to him. I know, but they throw away their donuts they don't sell after they close, Johnny explained. Isn't that kind of a crime, I said. I wasn't on board with the idea at first, because going to jail wasn't really high on my bucket list. It's not at all. The donuts are in the trash, so they're fair game. It's not stealing, it's just free donuts. He would not have any of us sold on his idea had he not said the word free. The word free is the ability to make anyone do anything, including eating donuts out of a dumpster. People will do anything for free stuff, and we were no exception, so we were in. The time was 11:34, and the closest Dunkin' to us closed at 11. That means by the time we got there, the donuts would, in theory, be about 40 minutes fresh. And so it was. We were about to undergo a donut heist out of a dumpster behind Dunkin'. Performing this advanced heist was going to require us to be quick, quiet, and coordinated. When we arrived at the Dunkin', we pulled into the back parking lot of the building. Johnny, being the mastermind behind this advanced heist, gave us the game plan. The plan is as follows. As we sat in the back of his car, Peter, you and Evan will go up to the dumpster and grab as many donuts as you can carry. You'll bring them back and we'll split them evenly. But there was still one problem. As we sat in the parking lot about 35 feet away from the dumpster, we noticed another car sitting idle with its lights on at the other side of the lot. For all we knew, that could have been an undercover cop, and he overheard that a group of 4 teenagers were scheming to score free donuts out of a dumpster at 11:45 on a Saturday night. Even though what we were doing was no way against the law, we didn't want to take our chances, so we waited, and waited, and waited. The 2 cars looked at each other, their headlights in a staring contest. We waited for what felt like forever until finally the car's engine revved up and it left. It was go time. Johnny pulled his car up closer to the dumpster and unlocked it. Like soldiers rushing out of the trenches, Evan and I leaped out of the car. We weren't running, but we weren't walking either. I opened the lid to the dumpster, which did not smell of donuts, but of rather stale coffee. Nonetheless, the donuts were sitting there, looking as good as dumpster donuts could look. The deed was not done, however. The donuts weren't just sitting there, they were in a white garbage bag. Seeing this, I did what any other rational human being would do. I grabbed the whole bag. In the heat of the moment, I didn't think much of it, but if you put a flimsy garbage bag up against 50 pounds of donuts, it's pretty obvious what the outcome will be. I didn't even make it 5 feet before the bag exploded, and the donuts went everywhere. There were munchkins rolling around like ping pong balls. The concrete around the dumpster, once black, was now stained white with all the powder from the sugary pastries. I could hear Johnny and Andrew burst out laughing, who were watching the whole scene unfold from the car. They had just witnessed the great donut massacre. Anyways, we did not get our donuts that night. What we did, however, was get a very, very fun cleanup, about 300 donuts and donut holes off the ground of a Dunkin' parking lot. We learned our lesson. If you want donuts at midnight, just go to the grocery store and buy some.
Hi guys again. I have one quick little piece. This is called I Dream. Ever since I was a little girl, I dream, I dream, I dream. Reaching for the stars, reaching for the moon, reaching for every possibility any 6-year-old can imagine. I think, I think, I think. Mom and Dad hold my hand to school. My best friend sleeps over for the night. And Mom made pie for dessert. I grin, I grin, I grin. Middle school tryouts for volleyball start. I made the team. My best friend is by my side for pictures. You could never separate us. I open the door to the minivan after practice and drag my feet to a seat. A huge yawn comes out of me. I'm tired, but life is good. I breathe, I breathe, I breathe. Freshman year, and there are way too many faces I don't recognize. Is that my best friend? She's changed so much. Not for the better nor worse, but something is off with her. I approach her, and I don't know her. At least not anymore. She's different. She's changed. She's mean. I sigh, I sigh, I sigh. Thank God practice is over. I feel slow, unathletic, and pathetic. I'm not sure how I landed a spot on varsity because these girls are so good. Too good, almost. My confidence plummets as I try to fix my errors. Nothing is working. I try, I try, I try. Homework is hard to do. Minutes turn to hours, and before you know it, it's 10 p.m. It's also hard to concentrate when mom and dad continue to bicker nonstop. I lay in bed, scrolling through social media to cancel out the noise. I cry, I cry, I cry. The deep hole finally hits me. It hurts to see her change. It hurts not to see any improvement in my athletic and academic performance. It hurts to see mom and dad divorce. I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. I look back now on how I fell to the knees of defeat and depression. I smile because I survive. It wasn't the 6-year-old dream, but choosing to live reassures 6-year-old me I can still reach the moon and stars. Someday I'll reach it. Until then, I dream, I dream, I dream. Thank you.
That was really good. That was really, really good. I just wanted to say, like, I don't know, that one really stuck with me. Okay, this one is like more of a story. Yeah, I don't know. Say so. Okay, so this one is called Apostles' Recollections. It's like fantasy. Okay. In pages collected over years by a certain apostle comes together a story in pieces. Rich, tattered paper cuts at the fingers of those who read, those who dare. The folds of the pages open in on themselves, creating pockets filled to the brim with nothing but ancient salt and dust. A book once thought to be burned, to be gone, a book once lost and discontinued. A tome of which the world once marveled and then consequently demonized. Water damage, burns, tears, pockets and pockets and pockets upon pockets, flower stems, stains of any and all kinds, stains of clear, salty water bestowed upon the tome, descending, cascading, feather falling, and fleeting, down from the endless pools of the doors to the apostle's soul, a soul of which contained only the purest of purities in man. Wells of knowledge, wells of power, wells of passed down resentment and rage and anger incomparable to that of Ares. Upon finding each page, one by one, until every sacred page and piece of the tome was brought together, a salty tear made its way from out of his doors, leaving his soul's signature. And that night, as he discovered the secrets the gods withheld, the pages of the tome deteriorated into oceans. Salt, water, cries out into the night that joined the billions that the gods ignored, as he had found out. Hereditary hatred lit his bones, as if deep cuts were made in his flesh down to the bone, and those cuts were filled brimless with coal stones and briar and ash. Pages, and were then lit, enraged. The fire coursed through him, ripping apart and decaying anything in sight. It filled his hands, and they began to burn. It filled his feet, and they began to burn. It filled his eyes, and they burned brighter and brighter until tomes of mahogany and rich blood covered his sight. He then set out and beleaguered every site at which he found a page, heard of a page, found a lead, or heard wind of the tome itself. And when he was done, the 4 cardinal directions burned and wept with him. Then, as if violently awoken from a deep slumber, or even a trance, he sat up and looked on in horror at the fire and debris left in his wake. His weeping and hatred now conducted away from any of the cardinal directions and into the heavens. He wept of his lack of understanding, of his betrayal, of his crimes, and of the crimes committed against him. He wept of the sins committed by the gods themselves, angry at them for their transgressions, regardless of what had been done unto them to incur such a wrath. And the scorned God said, bite well the hand that feeds you, for truly that is the nature of man. And howl up into the heavens, bellow your woes until the heavens open up their gates to allow you chance set upon us as you have set upon your own people. And the tome was shut, lost forever.
Give them one more big round of applause. Any questions from the crowd? What you got? Are you asking this just to one person? If you like pie, what is your favorite kind of pie?
Not much of a pie person, so I don't really like pie.
If I had to choose, probably apple.
It's too hard to choose one. I've talked about this. Probably like a mixed berry pie, though.
I'm not really a pie fan.
I'm not a pie fan either, but key lime pie is pretty good.
Sweet potato pie.
Correct answer is banana cream. So, I feel like pie might be generational. Like, I feel like that. So that's. Any other questions from the crowd? Where are we at? Oh, okay, up here. Overalls. Who's that for? Treasure. Can you please explain your poem more?
Which one? The first one or the second one? The first one? Okay, ooh, okay, I was hoping someone would ask. The first one is about like, okay, let me not start like on like the whole feminist movement, but like women tend to be reduced the moment that they become mothers. Like as soon as they have a kid, it's not about them, it's about the kid. And then that's their whole future, you know, like for example, like teen pregnancy, that's your future. Like that child isn't your responsibility until they turn 18. They're your responsibility for the rest of their life and the rest of yours. You know? So it's like, there goes the woman and in comes the mother. Does that make sense?
Other questions? Right there, Miss Williamson.
Yeah, so actually, we took creative comp with OD last semester, and the final, like our final thing to do was, like a write battle. So, funny thing, actually, I looked at Elena right after we presented, and we're like, should we turn it in? The day of, and here we are. So, yeah.
That brings us to the end of 7th hour, or just about the end of 7th hour. Thank you so much for being an incredible crowd. Keep up the good, positive energy. Have a great day. Legit, one of my favorite hours in years. Incredible. Incredible.
Hello, hello. Ah, there we go. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's good to see all of you. Welcome to our day 2 of Writers Week. Thanks for coming today. If you have the ability to, if you know that your parents or family members are part of the Booster Club, make sure you thank them because we couldn't do that without them. Look down the aisle, find your teacher. My class, I'm up here. Give me a thumbs up or give them a thumbs up and say, thanks for bringing us today. That was nice of you. Today has been a day of, there's Mrs. Ank in case you were looking for her. Today has been a great day of student presenters, and we are going to cap it off with some really great ones today. But I wanted to kind of let you in on a surprise. The folks up here have something special planned. If you look under your chairs right now, everybody look, you'll find a secret surprise for all of you. I'm just kidding, there's nothing under your chairs. Did you guys look under too? Yeah, nice. What about over here? Did you look under? No? Okay. All right. It worked well. That went great. All right, first up, we have the wonderful Will Chen. Let's give him a round of applause.
What's poppin'? How we doing, guys? Good? We're doing good? All right, that's great. My name is Will Chen, as he mentioned earlier. I am a senior, and I'm going to be reading 2 of my original poems today. Before I start, I want to give a huge shout out to Mrs. Eng's 8th period AP Lit class. Where are you guys? There you guys are. Awesome, and also my wonderful parents who are sitting in the center right there. Can you guys give it up for my parents, please? Thank you. So, I'm going to start off with a bit of an interesting question for you guys. How many times have you guys been rejected by somebody you like? This is a no judgment zone. I want to see those hands. Come on. Put them up. Put them up. Let's go. Okay, there's a few of you out there. There's a few of you. All right. I have another question. How many times do you think I've been rejected? 3 times. 0? I've been actually rejected 3 times. So anybody who gets 3. Yeah, there you guys go. All right, but I guess enough chit chat because you guys probably know what I'm talking about in my poem. My first poem is about a more recent event in my life. I mean, I've been rejected 3 times, but this one felt different, I guess. So, my poem is called Unread. It's inspired by a palindrome poem written by Nate Marshall. And you won't see it on the, you guys can't obviously see what it's written, but everything is written in lowercase because I guess it's to come off more as like cool and casual. Like kind of like how when we text, a lot of us tend to take away the capital letters. I know I'm guilty of it. I know a lot of us are guilty of it. But that's basically the idea behind it. And you'll also see me kind of create words of my own using like the un prefix, so like undo, unhook. But I kind of, using the un prefix, I kind of create my own words to kind of like really highlight the effects of like time. So here is my poem, Unread. She rejects my feelings backwards so smoothly. My nerve-wracking confession goes back into my mouth. My mouth untastes like mud and roses. I walk backwards from her and say my last ever hello to her in reverse. I impress the button on my keys to lock the car, and I drive backwards to my house. My reality before I destroy our relationship forever. We untalk and unlaugh about our everyday lives. We unforge our relationship. She unsends the text saying, I would love to go with you. I look at her surprised face in reverse as the autumn leaves swirl around us. I unhold my confession, scrawled in the air. I go back home. The colored ink flows back into my markers. The words flow back into my mouth. I unhear the fact that she most likely liked me. I unlisten to her favorite song. I unthink to myself, I really think we have this. I talk backwards with her on those long summer days, and I unsavor all the joy I have of her. I think to myself of her smooth black hair, her glossy black eyes, and the sound of her voice ringing backwards in my head. I unfigure out her personality, our common interests and hobbies, our relatable lifestyles. She walks backwards out of the center for the first time, and I look at her in reverse as she walks in reverse, thinking backwards. That's a new face, but where have I seen her before? My eyes catch her in reverse as I walk backwards through the hallway, and our eyes unmeet for a split second as I unsearch her classroom for one of my friends through that tiny glass window. This is when I first see her, my sophomore year. I knew her for 2 years, but I only knew her for 6 months. Thank you. So I actually have a second poem for you guys. This one is not nearly as depressing, don't worry. But it's about I wrote this poem like last minute, so shout outs to Mrs. Eck and Mr. Anderson for making it happen. It was a poem inspired by Tai Himba Jess, where basically, I don't know if you guys can see it from here, but the way it's written, I have 2 separate stanzas, and the way you can read it is you can read one stanza by itself or one stanza by itself, and those are 2 separate poems in itself. But the other way you can read it is from left to right, like this, combining both stanzas, and that becomes one poem. So for time's sake, I'm just going to read the combined version because I think it fits really well. And the idea and the inspiration behind this poem was kind of like how I really got close to I really got even closer to one of my closest friends in high school, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's just kind of like a recreation of like how our personas, even though like we kind of like think of ourselves as different individual people, you know, we're just like deep down, we're like so similar. So that's what it's about. Here is Will Chen versus his best friend. I'm the loud one, yet I'm not as loud. And I don't think I'm nearly as good at expressing myself when it comes to conversation as you are. Socializing first isn't my thing. Maybe it was better to stay quiet. I'm more at ease with just listening. But even now, I'm trying to become very similar to you. I feel like the best version of myself. Part of you is part of me, my own self. And even though you and I both know we are so different, that we are 2 separate individuals, we are so laughably alike. We are so laughably alike. Thank you. Next up, Malini Patel.
Hi everyone, my name is Malini Patel, and I'm a senior, and I'd like to give a quick shout out to Mr. Schaefer's 8th period rhetoric of cinema class. So today I'd like to share a piece called Imperfection. Have you ever had the feeling that everything is finally clicking into place? That everything is starting to make sense? That the path your life is leading to is the one you want to take? No? Well, me neither. I've always been the person to have everything planned out. I see my life in front of me and know exactly what's going to happen next. Well, this changed senior year. Everybody says that senior year is the year, the most relaxed and easygoing year that a high schooler has. The year where you become closer to the friends that have slowly integrated themselves into your life. The year you can finally take a step back and look at everything that you've accomplished. Well, let me tell you, there's a thing called college apps. Now, the first time that I heard about it, I thought it couldn't be too bad, considering it's one application you'd be sending to multiple schools. Well, let me tell you, that's only part of the truth. Seniors, you know exactly what I'm about to say. Juniors, take notes, and sophomores and freshmen, enjoy life while you can. Now, the best part of going through these applications is having to write 500-word essays that are like, why this major? Or, my personal favorite, why this college? In my head, I'm thinking, how do they expect me to write a 500-word essay on why I want to have a major in bio? I like the subject. What else can I say? Now imagine having multiple schools that have several supplemental essays. The stress of making each one of them perfect becomes unbearable.
Now, I'm not going to stand up here and continue to rant about the college apps that have slowly taken over my life. I'm standing here today to offer a few words of wisdom. As a senior, I look back at my previous years and can't help but wonder why I was overextending myself. As students of Fremd High School, I know that there is an awful lot of pressure from a school where AP is all that matters. That being placed in honors classes is the key to success. I look back and wonder who that girl was and why she put so much pressure on herself to be perfect. The answer is simple. For the people around me. To make my parents happy and proud to call me their daughter. To be able to sit in a classroom full of amazing, brilliant students and being able to call myself one of them. To fit into a society that valued the worth of being a straight A student. I still remember the first B that I ever got and how I wondered to myself if I could still call myself a straight A student or if that category no longer belonged to me. The self-judgment for not being perfect was eating at me piece by piece, unraveling me until I saw the whole truth. It does not matter. Whether or not you have straight A's, it does not matter. You are an identity that cannot be put into words or grades or numbers. You are unique. An individual that doesn't need to prove themselves to anyone. I'm glad I realized this sooner rather than later. Not having the pressure to continue living a life that no longer belonged to me has made senior year, how should I say it, more interesting. If you ever saw a girl dressed as a present during the Spirit Week before finals, yeah, that was me. Or if you saw a snowman walking the halls with bells that annoyed everyone, yeah, that was me too. These are just a few of the many instances where I did something that made me feel like me. Being able to express myself in a way that was different from everyone else and brought some school spirit into the week of finals definitely made it worth it. Seeing everyone's smiles in the hallways, knowing that I might have made their day a little bit better, made it all the effort worth it. So, to all those colleges that look at the statistics of me without realizing that I am more than a sum of my grades and the extracurriculars I have under my belt, I have one thing to say. I am better off. And to that girl that was caving under the pressure and stigma of perfection, I would say this. It's a never-ending cycle, but you have nothing to prove. Thank you. Next up is Shri Potankar.
Hi guys, my name is Shri Pathankar and I'm a senior here at Fremd. Quick shout out to Mrs. Ank's 8th period English class. So like I said, I'm a senior and performing at Writers Week is something that's been on my bucket list for a while, so I'm glad I can finally act on it this year. This year in my English class, we were tasked with writing for 10 minutes every day about something that brings you joy. We did this for 16 very long, very tedious days, and I would be lying if I said I'd used every 10 minutes every day to write these essays. But on the few instances in which I did, it was a nice time to just introspect and retrospect on your life and where you've gotten so far. Here are a few of those pieces. Hello, relative stranger. Yes, you. The one random person I see way too many times throughout the day as I walk to my classes. As we approached each other in the hallway last period, awkwardly making eye contact, I mentally sped ahead to our possible point of collision. So I did what any of us would do. I sidestepped you. You know, I always wondered if my sidestep was only half of the distance away from the oncoming person, would their sidestep, when they inevitably sidestepped me, create one whole step of space between us, or just one half space? Yet what if I didn't sidestep? What if I charged on, keeping my pace and trajectory the same, regardless of you? Would we have missed each other by the hair of a sidestep, by the hair of a half distance a sidestep constitutes? Or would we have collided entirely because you wouldn't have sidestepped me? So many questions today, but the combinations of full side steps, half side steps, and no side steps are countless and ultimately inevitable. Yet with all these combinations, all these possibilities of side steps and distance and no steps, why did you run into me today? I did my part, I sidestepped. So even if you didn't sidestep, perhaps because you forgot or were distracted, we shouldn't have ran into each other because my sidestep should have accounted for the sliver of distance between us. Alas, the only consensus I can come to using this information is that you purposefully performed the rare, never before seen, negative sidestep on your own, which I guess we would just call a step towards me. So I guess my question in this incredibly long letter of possibilities, combinations, and run-on sentences is, why me? Thank you. I would like to present Arvind Ganesh Kumar.
This. Oh yeah, dude, this is a lot of people. Yeah, this is a lot of people. Like, geez, like I can teach in like an intern class, but I can't. Anyway, you know what? So first, of course, can I give a third shout out to my 8th period English class right there? And then also I'd like to thank Mr. Klein for helping me out with this essay and giving me like half the idea for my essay. And of course, if you guys want an encore, I'll be happy to share my Santa essay. They know what it means. But without further ado, this piece is called An Epistemic Pandemic. The blazing summer sun spared no mercy on us. By the side of the court, under a large oak tree, my friends and I were taking a break from basketball, chatting, as friends normally do. But rather than talking about the game or school, as any unsuspecting person would deduce, we were talking about politics. It was then that out of nowhere, my friend had asked whether I wanted to debate on current events. Reluctant, I accepted, but soon I was stumbling over words, trying to piece together the very first of my arguments. My friends joined in, and I was left in the dust, this ideological quarrel, constrained to listen. I'd never felt so ignorant. More importantly, I was faced with a shortcoming, my disengagement with the world around me. Compelled to change this, I began to research. For each new topic, I'd read several articles detailing the general context of the issue. And painful as it was, I ventured into unfamiliar ideological territory by reading opposing opinions to my own. Little by little, I learned until one day, a week at night, I felt liberated. My knowledge expanded, my views even shifted along the way, and most importantly, I was willing to listen. While I hadn't known it then, I had come across independent thinking, learning to acknowledge multiple perspectives and recognize my bias to develop a thoughtful analysis of pretty much any argument. But let's be real. Even though the concept of independent thinking has been around for ages, our country is more polarized than ever. Nobody listens to each other anymore. And unfortunately, social media has made it so easy to form protective bubbles and limit physical interaction with others. So, I'd like to follow with an interesting documentary titled Accidental Courtesy that I came across not too long ago to show you that hope is still there. The year is 1983. Country music was making its resurgence, sweeping bars across America. And for a young man named Daryl Davis, a famous black jazz pianist, he joins the Western country music movement in a quote-unquote white bar, where, after a gig, a patron sat down with Davis and had a drink, until the patron further remarked that he had never had a drink with a black man. Of course, Davis insists why. With his friend nudging him on the shoulder, the man reluctantly admits that he was a part of the Ku Klux Klan. Ironically enough, they became friends. A few years later, his journey with the KKK takes off, fueled by the search for an answer to the question that he will never find an answer for. How can you hate me if you've never met me? pulling up an immense amount of courage, knowing very well the danger he's putting himself in, given that he's a target. He starts to find and interview members, which incredibly brings them to Grand Dragon Roger Kelly, a high-ranking leader of the state clan, only second in command to the national head of the KKK, also known as the Grand Wizard. Funny enough, they become friends. They have conversations together. They eat together. They visit each other's houses until Roger Kelly does something you'd never expect. He names Daryl Davis the godfather to Kelly's daughter. And over time, the cemented mentality of Roger Kelly, a high-ranking official of the KKK, begins to crack until Roger Kelly hands in his robes, forever leaving the KKK. Davis gave a platform to someone even with the most radical of views and listened. Of course, Davis knew everything the KKK believed and stood for was dead wrong. So while Davis didn't respect anything Roger Kelly said, he respected his right to say it. He tried to understand not just Kelly's opinions, but the context of his opinions. If all you do is discuss how incorrect some viewpoint is with those who agree with you, you won't accomplish anything. To make true progress, you have to invite somebody who has a different opinion so you understand why they have that view and how to dissuade someone from that view. And of course, despite your best efforts, there is no guarantee that you're going to change someone's mind. When you engage in civil discourse, the intent is not to change someone's mind, but to understand their opinion and where they're coming from. Now it's your turn. I know it might be scary, but one day down the line, you too will mature into an active member of society, and when that time comes, it is up to you to determine what you believe is right and wrong, and how to amend what you believe to be wrong. Going back to that summer's day, while I wasn't able to add to the debate, I'm happy that at least I decided to listen. As I leave you, I hope that you remember to listen too. Thank you. I'd like to present the next speaker and member of Tri Music Honor Society, Thomas Liu.
Hey guys, my name's Thomas. As said before, I'm a junior. Shout out to Miss Christensen's 8th period. So I have 2 poems for you today, and the first one is a little bit on the shorter side, and it's called Untethered. They had to cut me out like a tumor, exorcise me from the womb. Peeling back the curtains, they saw me bound by flesh on all sides, a quiet lump that sweetened the blood. And their needles and pills had kept me supple, kicking. For now, my mother called me by my pet name, Feifei, little treasure. As they lifted me out, a reckless, tender love welled up in the room and sank everything but us. For now, it licked her brain clean of doubts. For now, it let temper stir in my cheeks. For now, I was hers to keep. They pressed 8 wet pounds to her chest, clamped the line closed, and I was untethered. Thank you. So my second poem is called Sada, and I guess a little bit of background about it. Sada Abe was a Japanese geisha restaurant worker and author, among other things. And she lived from around the early 1900s to around 1970. And her claim to fame is that in 1936, she killed her lover, whose name was Kichizo Ishida. And at the time, this caused a lot of media attention to be drawn to her. And since then, her story has spread. So this poem is called Sada. Detectives, I know no more than you do. All I know is that the sash was just long enough to wrap twice around his neck. All I know is that I yanked. You told the story yourself with your jagged, rot-toothed words. Strangulation, mutilation, blunt force. You saw what I pulled out of my pocket. You told the story yourself when you called my father an honest and upright man, the man who loved me like he loved making tatamis, who pressed and weaved me like those floor mats. He sold me into work for a crush of coins in his hand. He lured me home by the quiver of his mouth. You told the story yourself. I am to blame for how I turned out. And all my life I've met men like him, men who rifled through me like the banknotes they loved, men who pulled my hair like a sword from the sheath, men for whom I folded my love in half and licked my lips. Detectives, I'll tell you my story if you let me. I'll tell you how Kachizo's life spindled in the air between us like a spider down a web. How I felt its beat fade into nothing. How I lay back down and he was still warm. How the most love I ever felt rose up from the walls in that moment and held us there. I'll tell you that no man ever loved me like Kachizo Ishida did. That night when danger threaded through my body like veins, when life itself whipped between us in storm, when our love burst like a flower into bloom, I lived. Thank you. Next up is Anthony Bahari.
What's up? So, my name is Anthony. I'm a senior, and I'll be presenting some poems today. This first poem is called Sleep, and it's just about going to sleep. And so, I'll just start. Sluggishly moving up the steps, struggling to keep my eyes open, peeling the glasses off my face. Pulling the light switch down, the moon limps its way into the window. Swallowed by the bed, I ponder about my life. What will I do with my chaotic and beautiful life? Thank you. I also forgot to give a shout out to Mrs. Ang's AP Literature class. There we go. Now, this next poem is called Wake, and it's about, you guessed it, waking up in the morning. Forcing myself awake, my mind springs into action. The day is set before me, jumping into my shoes, throwing my backpack on, there's work to be done. I do what I need to do in my life, striving for what I want. Thank you. Now, for the next part, could I get one volunteer? Yeah, you can come. And what's your name?
My name is Rayvon.
We got a round of applause for Rayvon. So, I do a lot of programming in my spare time, and I taught myself programming starting 2 years ago, and I take a lot of comp sci classes, and it's a passion for me. And I plan on going to college for computer science or cybersecurity, so I spend a lot of my time programming. And when I applied for Writers Week, I was like, how can I make this a program? And so I did, and I'd like to show you now. If it would show. But I'll just explain it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask 2 questions 8 times. And the first question is going to be what poem you'd like to take from, either Sleep or Wake. And then the second question is going to be which line you'd like to take from. And there are 8 lines. And then after the program is done, there'll be a new poem with hopefully a different type of meaning. Which poem you'd like to take from? Which line? Good choice. Which poem you'd like to take from? Which line? That was a bad choice, sorry. I'm just kidding. Keep going. Good choice. Keep going. Now, can we get a drum roll, please? The poem you made, jumping into my shoes, struggling to keep my eyes open, the day is set before me. Struggling for what I want, sluggishly moving up the steps, swallowed by the bed. I ponder about my life, throwing my backpack on. Thank you. And could I get one more volunteer? Do it again. Don't raise your hands all up at once. What's your name? David. Get a round of applause for David. So you know the gist, so we'll just roll through it. Which poem would you like to take from? Which line? These are the choices you have left, so you can use all these signs. Good choice. Go ahead. Much better choices than Ravon's. Anyway, can we get a drum roll, please? And your poem was, "The moon limps its way into the window. There's work to be done. Forcing myself awake, struggling to keep my eyes open, I do what I need to do in my life. What will I do with my chaotic and beautiful life? Cleaning the glasses off my face, jumping into my shoes." Thank you.
Let's give them one more round of applause, please. All right, I think, do we have time for one more, or? One question. We can take one question. Does anybody have a question? Do we? You have 2 minutes. Okay, a 2-minute Santa story.
So really quickly, so imagine hide and seek, but it's Santa and it's horror. Okay, here we go. I open the door and enter the basement stairwell. Thump, thump, thump. Peekaboo, peekaboo, I see you. Come out, wherever you are. Santa's here, I just wanna play. I move across the basement, looking for people to turn into elves. You can hide. I got you! But there was nothing in the alcove under the stairs. I inch slowly, trying not to make a sound. It's pitch black, the basement. It's okay, kids. Santa has presents and cookies and warm milk for you. I opened the closet in the playroom. I found you. Ah! My friend screams as I poke my head through the closet door. I reach out to grab him, and he instantly becomes my elf. We hunt for the other naughty children, and I slowly return back to the living room area of the basement. I find a blanket spread between the couch and armrest, as if someone wants me to find him or her. It's too easy. I jump, John Cena style, only to fall through the blanket onto the floor. A decoy. I knew it. My thrill is just beginning. I love this game, I think to myself. The others are still hiding. The game will continue until everyone becomes Santa's little helper. All right, thank you. Thank you.